Hello, what's going on? Good Thursday morning to you. It's John Casman here, and I'm doing a special segment. I got a great guest lined up today. I'm going to be talking to Marcus Ogden. Now, Marcus is somebody I've been talking to and working with for a little bit of time now, and Marcus has a phenomenal background. And specifically, there are two main things that I want to talk to Marcus about. One is he's got a great story and he had to overcome financial setback. So I want to talk to anybody who's concerned right now about where the market may go or their current finances and how to overcome that situation. But also, Marcus is a great keynote speaker, and I'm going to be speaking at the MFIN conference June 22nd through the 25th. And I want to talk to Marcus about not just for me, but how anybody could crush a presentation. So, with that, let's bring Marcus on to here right now. Hey, Marcus, good morning to you.
How are you, sir? How's it going, John?
I'm doing great, man. Doing great. But listen, I gave the people a little bit about your background and who you are. Why don't you take a second though and give us a little bit more context?
Yeah, thanks, John. So my name is Marques Ogden. I'm from Washington, D.C. I now live in Raleigh, North Carolina with my wife, my two daughters, and my two dogs. I am a national, international keynote speaker, executive coach, best-selling author, podcast host. I am a brand ambassador, and I'm also a former NFL athlete. And I love to help people through speaking, messaging, storytelling to help them become the best version of themselves.
I love it, man. I love it. Now, and I interviewed you for my podcast a little while ago, and one of the things that jumped out to me with your story is you were a former NFL player, you were in construction, you were doing really well financially, but you had a pretty big setback. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, John. So in 2012, our company became the largest African American subcontractor in the city of Baltimore and the state of Maryland. Actually, I'm sorry, it was 2011. So we were there for 2 years. But unfortunately, John, as the company grew in size, grew in revenue, grew in sustainability, my ego got in the way. I became a very self-sabotaging leader where I literally was self-absorbed with everything having to be my way. And we actually have a keynote, John, a signature keynote titled Self-Absorption Causes Self-Destruction, because I was so encapsulated in what I wanted, what I needed. I didn't think about my team, my people. And because of that, my people got frustrated with me, which I totally understand now at this time in my life, and they left. And when they left, that with along with a job where I took for another construction company, a contracting company, and I spent about $3 million of my money unexpectedly in less than 90 days, and my exchange order work was denied. That sent me into a Chapter 7 complete bankruptcy. And in 2013, I went to a place of darkness, a place of despair. And I literally had to my name, John, $400. That's it. 2012 was a multimillionaire with a growing business. 2013, bankrupt, broke, home foreclosed on, both cars repossessed in the same day. And literally, I lost absolutely everything.
Wow. I mean, you mentioned 2012 multimillionaire, 2013, you had $400 to your name,
That's
right?
it.
You mentioned self-absorption. In hindsight, that was the thing that did you in.
Correct.
For someone who's an entrepreneur who believes that they've got to make it happen and their vision is the right way, and all this success has come off of the backs of their work and their vision, how do they recognize those kind of traits so that they can maybe pivot and correct it?
Great question, John. The minute people are trying to give you constructive criticism or advice and you think you're too good to take it, look out. Trouble is coming right down the path. We literally, John, just renamed all of our keynotes to be signature keynotes because a lady named Kathy out of Toronto, who has a big speaker bureau, said, Marcus, you're a great speaker. You have great content. You have a great website, great clients, but your keynotes are bland. They're basic. There's nothing that's exciting. So
The
we
names of them, not the actual
correct
keynote
the name,
presentation, just the
correct
title of
the
them. Got it.
titles, right? She said your keynotes are great, your topics are great, your content is phenomenal. Your keynote titles are bland. They're very basic. And she said, if I'm trying to buy a speaker and their keynote title does not grab me right away, I'm done. I'm on to the next. So that was some great feedback, Jonathan. I just got 2 weeks ago. And I'm here at this point in my career, 38 Fortune 500 brands as a speaker, all this great stuff, right, John? But when she gave me that advice, I listened. I didn't say, what are you talking about? Who are, look at me. I'm 38 Fortune 100 company. I'm this and that. I just said, no. I said, Kathleen, thank you. Appreciate it. And we put that into action. And finally, as of yesterday, those signature keynotes are now on our website on the homepage. So anybody that goes to our homepage can see what what basically like, so it says leadership, but ours is called self-absorption, causes self-destruction, right? We have one on professional development. It's now titled At 32. So we have crafted our own unique titles, right, John, that fit our brand. But without Kathleen giving us that feedback and us applying it, we wouldn't have that. So even though I'm where I'm at right today, John, I still take feedback. I still listen to people. And the minute you think you can't take advice or you can't listen to somebody, trouble's on the way.
I think the interesting note there is that you are seeking this feedback from somebody who could help you get from where you're at today to the next level.
Right.
And I think one of the things with entrepreneurs is, not a lot of people understand them, right? So when they're getting feedback, that constructive criticism has to come from a source that they can listen to. So talk to me about that. How do you know who to listen to as opposed to maybe who to ignore or where to seek other counsel from?
You want to talk to people that are doing what you want to do. That's the key. Getting advice from people who are not achieving what you want is not going to get you where you want to go. So you have to learn, right, John? Like I learned from one of my mentors, Mel Robbins. Find someone that's 2 years ahead of you, right? So, like, take me. I'm not going to try to go out and beat Tony Robbins, right? He's got 30, maybe even close to 40 years ahead of me. I'll never catch him. But if somebody's 2 years ahead of me, like Mel started maybe about three or so before I did, 3 or 4, that's realistic, right? And again, I don't want to be Mel Robbins. I don't want to do everything that Mel Robbins does, but I want to look at what Mel Robbins is doing and how can I apply that to my unique story, to my unique brand, right? And then from there, that's what it's all about. So if you're an entrepreneur trying to get to the next level, find someone that's already at that level or close to that level, and then learn from them. And that's
I
what
love it.
mentoring is all about.
Yeah, great points there, man. Just I think it helps to surround yourself with the right people because oftentimes when you're getting that criticism, it can feel like a tax. And that's if you're not listening to the right people and you're not trying to understand what it is they're trying to help you with. So make sure you're talking to the right people who are a couple steps ahead of you, who are trying to help you get to the level that they're at and learning and listening from them. So excellent advice there. Marcus, I want to go back to kind of that financial hardship, right? So you're in this dark space. Today you're, a nationally recognized speaker doing a bunch of keynotes for these Fortune 500 companies and all sorts of other big brands. How did you go from, $400 to your name completely in a, downward spiral to where you're at today?
So I was working as a custodian in downtown Raleigh on the night shift, 10 p.m. till 5 a.m.
So let me
Working
get this straight. You went from NFL athlete, multimillionaire in construction to a custodian working the night shift.
Yep. So let's go. Let's go. I went from an NFL athlete to a construction company owner to bankrupt to working at Merrill Lynch, fired. The next day got a job to a construction company, fired from that job 5 days later. started a small business as a entrepreneur teaching kids football. Clients were running low. I needed to make money. Took a job as a custodian working in downtown Raleigh for one of my football training clients. And I made $8.25 an hour. And what happened is, John, is that I had my spoiled milk rock bottom mode of clarity, taking the trash out and somebody's trash, rotten meat, nasty protruding garbage got over my body, my skin, and my clothes. Came home, wrote down my three biggest strengths, and said, I want to be a keynote speaker. That sounds grand. Tony Robbins, who I've listened to on podcasts, he was a janitor. Look where he is today. So I went after it. 2.5 years, John, not one paid job, not one. Got our first paid job April 2016 with Miller Mott College, learned the business, learned how to maneuver. And in the last 6 years, we now have worked for 38 Fortune 500 companies as a speaker. We've 15 are Fortune 100, 6 are Fortune 25. I'm podcasting. We have 3 best-selling books. We are brand ambassadors. We're having coaching clients, consulting clients. But to answer your question more specifically, I started with a vision of wanting to do something different with my life. And the most important thing in a vision, the first letter of the acronym is visualize. So many people, John, don't visualize. You have to see it. You have to feel it. You have to believe it. You have to let it go. One of the companies I do work with, Grind, is a toothpaste brand that I'm a part owner of and the chief marketing officer. I tell people all the time, I joined Grind because me and the owner, Roger, who's my business partner, we both saw it, see it. We both felt it, feel it. We both believed it, believe it. And we were going to let it go to the universe. See it, John, you have to visualize. Feel it, you have to have a positive jolt of energy that goes to your brain that says, you can do this. Believe it. You have to have faith no matter what. And that's where about 90 to 95%, John, of society falls off because they want instant gratification. They want it today. They don't want to wait till tomorrow. And I'm actually down here in Orlando at a speaking job for the Supervised Visitation Conference. And I talked about this yesterday. They said, Marques, how do you talk to parents that are just like in the moment of supervised visitation to young children? They're struggling. They're going through some things. They're mad, the courts, whatever. I said, hey, if these parents would look at the long-term end result, right? That this is just what we call part of the Lion King, the circle of life. This is a part. Children are young. They need our help. They need our advice. They need our guidance. They need our love. But as children grow up and get older, they need us less and less and less. And if you do right by them when they need you the most, hopefully when they're older, that becomes an easier job to parent because you worked your butt off at that early phase of life, or as Mufasa said, the circle of life. So that's what it's about. People need to focus on the long term, what's going to come down the road. If you get encapsulated, John, in the short term and all the things that you don't like and all that, yeah, it gets really easy to quit because you get frustrated, you get down on yourself, and then that's what happens. Then let it go. Once you're doing everything right, you have to let it go into the universe, and the universe is working for us. Right, John? We're seeing it, we're feeling it, and we're believing it. But that's on us. And once we've done that, let it go. The universe and favor will hopefully work for you.
Hey, man, great insights right there. And I appreciate you opening up about your journey and how you were able to get out of that tough place. You mentioned, that day when that trash opened up and got all over you. You went home, you wrote down your top 3 goals. You wanted to visualize it and have that vision, and then, really making sure that once you saw it, you believed in it, and then you made it happen. So I just appreciate you sharing that context. As I listen to you talk, that's a great transition about, keynote speaking. And not everybody's trying to be a keynote speaker, but
Sure.
a lot of times we do need to learn how to tell our story, whether
Right.
you are doing a job interview, whether you are on a podcast, whether you're talking to investors, like if you're an multifamily investor like myself, or you're just trying to sell yourself or your company. As entrepreneurs, that's what we do all day, every day. So talk to us a little about some of the best tips and insights when you are trying to tell your story and connect with an audience.
So when you're telling your story to an audience, you need to tie in the part of your story that fits the theme or the narrative of the audience. So if you're talking to someone about leadership, if you're focusing on the marketing and sales part of your story, that's not going to fit. I'll never forget this, John, when I spoke for a company called NetApp. It was my first corporate job ever. They hired me. I was so excited. It was in Chicago, Mike Ditka Steakhouse. I was 33 years old. I'm like, yes, I can crush this. I'm just gonna go all the way. So now get the theme, right? It was healthcare providers, doctors, nurses, COOs, CEOs, CXOs, chief level executive people in the hospital system. I spent most of my keynote talking about my business, Caden, and this and that. And I didn't do a lot of action steps because I was still young in my career, but I focused so much of my story on my corporate business. I thought I crushed it. I was like, yes, I was amazing. Remember getting some great feedback from the guy who hired me. His name was Dave. Dave said, Marques, how do you think you did? I said, Dave, I thought I did great. I thought I crushed it. He said, Marques, did anybody come up to you and tell you afterwards how well you did? Like, no, Dave, I didn't. No, you're right. No one did that. Marques, great passion, great energy, wrong topic. Wrong topic. I said, what do you mean, Dave? You were speaking to healthcare providers, doctors, nurses, C-level executives in hospital healthcare systems. They didn't want to hear about Caden. They wanted to hear about your NFL experience with CTE, trauma, the things you went through to get where you are today as a result of going through hard times in football. And what was that like? And focus more on that part of your journey. What you talked about would have been great for a business audience, but that was not who the audience was. Never forget that, Dave. Never forget that, John. And then he actually invited me back to speak for them again 6 months later, and I nailed it. And I had everybody say, Marques, great job. Thank you for sharing your story. I got a reference letter from them, and that was my first Fortune 500 client. Then went on the path, and continue to go where we're at today. So if you're going to be a speaker, right, you need to know the theme and the narrative of what they want you to talk about. And then focus your life or focus your story or your custom keynote from parts of your life that equivocate to the topic they wanted to speak on. Then there's 3 things that you must do to master a keynote. 3 things. Number 1, have amazing, strong stage presence. The way in which you stand, the way in which you come across, your body posture, that is going to impact people more than anything. It's 55%, John, of what impacts people when you're trying to speak. The second thing you have to do is you have to educate your audience. Give them something new that they didn't know before they walked in that room. And the third thing, you have to engage your audience, which comes from your tonality, comes from your pace, and your inflection. 38% of how you do that impacts people. And then the last 7% is the words out of your mouth. So, great stage presence, educate your audience, and engage your audience. If you do those 3 things as a speaker and you can put into people the stories of your life and action steps you've learned that are in direct relation to the topic that you've been hired for, you can be a really good speaker.
I love it, man. 3 things you just gave there. First and foremost, you want to have great stage presence. The second thing is you want to educate your audience. The third thing is you want to engage your audience. And I think those are great tips. Speaking of engaging your audience, Amanda, see the comment here. It's good morning to you. Dan, thanks for joining as well. I want to break these down a little bit more, right? So when we talk about amazing stage presence, that
Mhm.
sounds great.
Mhm.
How do we do that? Like what specifically can we do on a stage to make sure we have proper stage presence?
First thing, dress to your audience. Okay. If your audience is in all corporate three-piece suits, you're in a suit. If your audience is in jeans and button up, you're in a button up, right? You need to match the audience. Not every, like I'm right here right now, John. Like I have on a nice polo shirt, short sleeve, nice jeans. I have some nice dress shoes. I'm talking on stage at 11. I didn't wear a suit yesterday. I wore nice jeans. I wore a nice long sleeve button shirt with a nice blazer over top, right? When I spoke yesterday afternoon at my first keynote, I've got 3 keynotes in 2 days. I had 2 yesterday, 1 today. The one yesterday, John, I put a video on social media. I grabbed one of the nationwide exterior shirts, short sleeve, button up shirts. I wanted to what, John? Relate to the audience. Stage presence comes across how they look at you. Are you dressed like them? Are you dressed under them? Or are you dressed over them? You don't want to be over somebody because they're going to be like, oh, here's another guy or girl who thinks they're better than us. They're wearing this suit, all this stuff. You don't want to dress under them like, oh, this guy or girl didn't even like want to present themselves well to us. You want to be on the same level. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, you want to be standing tall and you want to have your eyes looking at people. You want to be engaging people to have strong stage presence, right? And again, what has to happen is they have to see through your stance, through your hand movements at times, through the way in which you're, reaching out to them or trying to, connect with them, that you believe and are confident in what you are saying, right? If they don't feel you're confident, John, they don't feel you're actually believing what you are saying, they're not going to believe it either. And the last thing, John, when it comes to stage presence, is you need to learn how to work the room, right? You need to learn how to either move around rooms sometimes, stay on stage at times, sometimes come down to the same level and speak. Sometimes you're going to use a lapel mic. Sometimes you may not use a mic. So it really varies. But what we're trying to do is really encapsulate how we look, how we speak, how we kind of move within a environment to be able to what? Have strong stage presence to master that environment. And again, the 3 things that I shared with you, I got that directly from a client, the global director of events for Equitable, which is the largest insurance company in the world. This woman gave me this advice. Again, right, John? Put my ego to the side and I listened. And I've ever since then made it a thing, a absolute necessity to have great stage presence, to educate my audience, and to engage my audience. But again, that's where stage presence comes in my perspective, and how you need to be able to master that, to be able to what, right, John? Help master the room.
No, great stuff there. It's interesting as I'm listening to you talk. I'm reading a book by John C. Maxwell, Everyone Communicates. And one of the things he talks about is also like removing a barrier between you and the audience. So some people like to present kind of standing behind a podium, but if you could step away from the podium and, kind of allow nothing between you and the audience, that's another great way to make a connection. So really great insights when you talk about how to have that stage presence, knowing your stuff, commanding the stage, walking around the stage, the entire stage, and making eye contact with the audience. As you talked about educating your audience, give me a little bit more context there, because I've seen people who they just educate and it's almost clinical in the presentation
Mhm.
style. And I know that that's another mistake people make too.
So, educating your audience is a combination of telling stories from your life and giving action steps to follow that up. And that, my friend, is what them is all about, right? So, when I educate an audience, right, John, What I like to do is I take information from books that I've read, other people, and I tell that to them. Like, for example, I told the client yesterday 100% of impact, right? 7% is what you say out of your mouth, 38% is tonality, 55% is your stage presence, right? And that's how I told them that. But, right, John, I just didn't say 7, 38, and 55 and just leave it alone. I say, you know what, you all? This is when in my career I did not do that. When I spoke for this client, I didn't do a good job of having great, stage presence, right? I did okay with speaking out of my mouth, but I didn't do a great job with tonality, right? This was early in my career. So I wanted to share with them experiences, good and bad. So educating the audience, yes, you want to talk about statistical data, you want to talk about information, all that kind of stuff. Absolutely. But if you want to be great, you want to then combine that statistical data, that educational information with stories that what are going to captivate them, because that's where what engage them comes from. If you're not telling stories, if you're not giving what Aristotle used to say as metaphors, people are going to get what, John? Disengaged. So you can't just talk up there like a robot or a clinical researcher, da 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 da. Now, if you're speaking and that's your job, that's different. If you're trying to be a keynote speaker or just somebody that's trying to what, John? You're on a podcast, you're doing a podcast, all this stuff, right, John? You need to understand educating people needs to be in combination with sharing stories with them that's going to make them say, this person is fantastic, great education, great stories, and what? They have captivated me. And that's how you really educate your audience and be strong with it.
Yeah, it's funny because people remember stories, right?
Of
They can
course.
listen to you, they can love the presentation, but if you ask them the next day, what do you say? They're probably going to recite a story you told, not necessarily a specific stat. Or, I mean, sometimes people remember stats, but you're not going to remember the other tactical things. You're going to remember the story. So, interjecting that into the message is the best way for people to actually remember the key messages you want them to take away. Listen, I've had a great time talking to you this morning. I don't know if there are any questions, but where can people learn more about you, kind of coaching, keynote speaking, all that stuff you've got going on?
Thank you, John. They can go to our website, www.marques, MARQUES, Ogden, OGDEN.com, or they can shoot us an email, marques@marquesogden.com. We love to connect with people. We love to engage people. And I like to live by this law. And our brand and our team is the same way. The law of value, which states, John, you want to give people more value than you take in payment. And that, my friend, is why for 2.5 years, I didn't get one paid job. If you want to be a keynote speaker, give people more value than they pay you, right? Give them, again, an entertaining story, great action steps, great strategies, educate them, but also enlighten and captivate them at the same time. Keynote speaking is an art of storytelling mixed in with education, mixed in with action steps, mixed in with here's how you can do it to inspire greatness in your life. So when you have that type of combination, right, my friend, that's when great things happen. I did not learn that until a couple years ago. Once I did, and I got the right people around me, that's when great things happened.
I love it, man. I love it. Thank you for sharing that, Marques. As always, pleasure talking to you. I'm sure we'll be in touch very soon. If you got great value out of this, let us know. Please leave us a comment. We want to hear more. If you want to do more interviews like this, I'd love to line up some more guests. And if you are not connected with us, one of the easiest things we can do right now to give you a little value is we have a sample deal package. If you're interested in multifamily investing, you can check that out on our website, casmancapital.com/sample deal. And that's a great way for you to start to wrap your head around what an apartment investment could look like for you, whether you want to be active or you want to be passive. With that said, Marques, want to thank you again for joining us this morning. I hope everyone has a great day.